Musical offering with David Dubal, Bach's Well-Tempered Clavier, presented in comparative performance and discussion.
David, we continue today, and I thought I'd start off today by asking about the Bach family, which of course we all know Bach's children, half of them at least, seem to have composed music of one type or another, and he came from a musical family. How far back does that go?
Bach's family goes back, I can say, quite a long time. I'm not exactly sure where the roots are. I can look them up and we can discuss that in detail. However, there were so many Bachs with so many different posts that at one time in a specific little German town, that to be a musician, at least a competent musician, you were to be called a Bach, not a musician. So in the sense of the family name, before Bach was born, it was already well established. He was like the culmination in genes and in environment of the greatest polyphonic genius of them all. And he then produced children. As he said, they were all born musicians. And of course, is this because Bach was a genius, or was it because at the moment they were born they heard one of the greatest musicians that ever lived playing for them, teaching them, talking about music, living it? His son, Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach, became one of the most famous and important composers of the next generation. Carl Philipp, I think, was born in 1714, and he lived to about 1787, and he was very influential in the newly forming classical sonata form. Mozart said, "We owe so much to Carl Philipp Emanuel," and he was part of the new stream of Romanticism filling all of Germany. Certainly the literary currents were hot and heavy, and Philipp Emanuel, in a way, is a direct ancestor to Schumann. His music is not known at all. He was prolific. He was a great keyboard player. One can hear the almost neurotic romanticism of Schumann in Carl Philipp's work. There was Wilhelm Friedmann, the eldest of Bach's sons. And that was from his first marriage to his cousin Maria Barbara. This was Bach's favorite son. He was closer to Bach in musical idiom, in the sense that he was immersed with the polyphonic spirit, and he was very fine organist, held posts, and he was a great light in Bach's life. After Bach's death, Wilhelm Friedmann did not do well as a person. He was always slovenly and lazy, and often people said it's a shame that he does not start putting the music that he's improvising down. And then the other famous Bach son is the youngest from his second marriage to Anna Magdalena, and he is Johann Christian Bach, often called the English Bach.
Or the London Bach, yeah.
Yes, and he was music master to the court there, and he had great influence again on Mozart. When Mozart was a young child in London, he would instantly go to hear Christian Bach. And Christian Bach was a beautiful example of the Rococo spirit music. Now, a whole aesthetic change had happened between 1720 and 1770. So Bach was considered even by his children as old-fashioned. Music had now become primarily the world of melody and accompaniment, while Bach's world was of blending together different voices.
Now he had, what, about 20 children, of whom quite a few survived. I know one was retarded. He's described somewhere as being an imbecile.
Yes, but again, reports are at variance. In a family book, Carl Philipp Emanuel wrote that this son that you were speaking of that had mental problems, we don't know about retarded, they said that he was a genius who never developed. The women in the family, the young girls, they all seem to have fine soprano voices. And Bach once, in one of the rare personal accounts that have come down to us, discusses the fact that in his household he has already a miniature orchestra, and as you once reported in the first program, Bach had many instruments in his house. This was his big luxury to own instruments, and he had 4 or 5 harpsichords alone.
In the book, there's an account that Anna Magdalena was paid by the church. She was on the church payroll. I believe this was St. Thomas. Was she a musician of particular renown before she met him, or just?
No, she was not of any particular renown, although she had sung in various places. I don't know if during Bach's duties at St. Thomas she had been used in any of his Sunday performances, because certainly she was had a very busy domestic life, although Bach certainly could have used her because he was constantly being bothered by the fact that he has such incompetent performers.
He was very demanding. I know in his student days, apparently, he was very critical of the students with whom he worked. I mean, it's a typical German thing, I think, to be, if you're good, to look down upon your peers who aren't. Well, maybe they're not peers, then.
He had to train what one would call juvenile delinquents today in the choir. They were a rough breed of boys, and he also had to teach them Latin. So he was constantly embroiled with them, and in many petty conflicts with the church themselves, the church officials. Let's open today with the 10th Prelude and Fugue in E minor. We heard that work yesterday in Wanda Landowska's performance, and we will now hear it on the piano with Roslyn Tureck. That was Roslyn Tureck in the 10th Prelude and Fugue in E minor. And compared to the Landowska performance we heard, I think very anemic. Do you?
Well, I think I'd rather hear the rest of the ones we're going to sample before I
Safety.
make any sort of judgment at all.
Safety first.
Well, no, Landowska is very energetic in comparison.
Yeah, I think this is a passionately lyrical prelude and a dynamic fugue, and I just didn't feel that all the capabilities were there. Let's hear the first appearance on the harpsichord of Martin Galling in the 10th Prelude and Fugue. 10th Prelude and Fugue in E minor is has just been completed by Martin Galling. Did you like that?
Well, it's much more animated, and of course the quality of the recording is much better than the Landowska, which were recorded. Were they 78s, by the way, the Landowskas? I suppose we could look that up. I'm asking you a question that's easily...
It was fairly early in the... I don't think they were 78s, though, no. This performance was nothing much. It was not subtle. It had very, very little in it, really, except playing the notes. Now let's turn to someone that you admire vastly, and that's...
Well, you have to qualify that for me.
I will qualify it.
If Glenn Gould has done it, I want to hear it, no matter what it is. Because
exactly.
He is just such a fascinating musician.
Yes.
And
for years, people would say, this man is eccentric, or this man is this, or it's not really Bach, or it's not Beethoven, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, he compels you to listen, and you later on find out, no, he is not eccentric. He is authentic.
I'm not sure.
Meaning, and I don't mean musicologically or any of this. I mean that he is very convinced of the way he is doing it. Even his Mozart sonatas, which at first hearing they are so perverse, I can't believe it.
Agreed.
And you see that, well, I don't think he's pulling a stunt on us. I think that a lot of hard, intense thinking and certainly work went into his performances. He's refreshing things. It's not maybe the kind of Mozart one wants to live with. Perhaps not Bach. However, his Bach is very exciting and interesting, and let's see what he does with the 10th Prelude and Fugue. was G.G., Glenn Gould.
He treats that instrument.
Some fingers, huh?
Yeah, and he treats it. It sounds. I hate to say it because I'm not sure. I'm saying exactly what I mean, but he makes that piano sound a bit like a harpsichord. All of a sudden, you feel a family resemblance, or at least I do.
I think there's something done to that piano.
Is that what it is?
Uh-huh. I'm not sure.
I know he likes. He likes to play different types of pianos. I know a friend of mine in Baltimore years ago had a Chickering, and Gould insisted on coming over to try it out.
Mm-hmm. Jonas Chickering was America's first great piano builder. About 1820, he started working in Boston and New York, and he was the inventor of the iron frame for the piano, which was a great technological step forward. I don't know how many Chickerings are built now, if any.
There's nothing here on the liner notes about his piano being changed. Nothing at all.
Who's queued up next for the 10th Prelude and Fugue?
Okay, the clavichord with Kirkpatrick.
Okay. That was Bach on the clavichord. Ralph Kirkpatrick. Landowska has a book called, it's different writings that she had produced through her career, Landowska on Music. It's published by Stein and Day, and it's in paperback now. It's a remarkable book from a remarkable woman. Anyway, she was, of course, always defending the harpsichord as the instrument Bach should be played on, and we just heard the clavichord, and she writes, "The rich, colorful, and ever-changing well-tempered clavier with the broad polyphony of its fugues. How could it be confined to the limited domain of the clavichord when Bach had a harpsichord at his disposal? A harpsichord with a variety of registers capable of producing sharp outlines or muted whispers, silvery and fluted tones, as well as shifting sonorities and majestic fullness. These preludes and fugues are simply inconceivable on the weak clavichord. They demand imperiously the harpsichord and its architectural planes of sound, its wide, airy horizons, which leave us free to erect bold arches within and between which the parts move, float, converge, diverge, and meet in absolute freedom." Eloquently written. She loved the harpsichord, and we're going to hear her again, but you have queued up a piano performance. The clavichord has a sweetness, though, you know, which is, I think, unique. Let's hear now Arthur Loesser in the Prelude and Fugue in E minor.
Yeah, that's just absolutely astonishing. That fugue, the prelude
Oh,
was
no,
fine.
the prelude was so romantic.
Yeah.
He got away with it beautifully, I think. It was just marvelous. You want very badly to hear this again, don't you?
I said, yeah, let's
Okay.
listen to the fugue. I may have a bit of trouble finding it. We may hear the end of the prelude first, but here it comes.
Arthur Loesser. Okay, we did that again, and you're smiling.
Well, I like that very much. And of course, you you tell stories about Arthur Loesser since you studied with him, which we unfortunately can't repeat, but he seems to be a charming gentleman.
Oh, absolutely. He played the whole of Book 1 and then Book 2 on different evenings. And I think he had, I'm not sure if it was a trick, but it certainly seemed that he was always, everyone felt the same thing. He would look at someone in the audience while he was playing. Oh, he was a demonic human being in a sense. And everyone thought he was looking directly at whoever, you know. So I thought it was very effective. I don't know if it was, I never asked him if it was conscious or unconscious, but he really didn't look at the piano that much. I mean, he was in another world. His competence was so extraordinary. He could play anything. Just anything. I'd say, do you know Du Sex Rondo La Chaz? Oh, sure. He'd say, I haven't played this in 50 years. I said, well, how do you still know it? He said, oh, it's automatic pilot by now. But very great musician who thought of himself as a servant to the art, not just, you know, a virtuoso or someone that was trying to make a career as a pianist, but as a teacher who knew he could accompany all the Schubert Lieder. You know, he knew every Beethoven sonata. He could dance every single saraband or allemande. If you were having trouble with the rhythm in a French suite, he would just dance it for you. This is the way it goes, and it's a dance, and he knew the steps, and he was marvelous.
Very rounded.
Oh, yes, and of course his book, Men, Women, and Pianos, is a very great social history.
That brings up a question that I've been meaning to ask anyway. You say that he, on separate evenings, played Book 1 and then Book 2 later on. In Bach's time, the Preludes and Fugues, were they performed at all? Did Bach ever perform them, and if so, in what form?
No, they weren't even published until 1801.
I see. So they were just, if anything, just played around the house, and that was
played around the house and given to Bach's students.
But they were not designed really as far... Well, of course, there was no real concert the way...
No, and you remember the quote from Charles Rosen, that this was written for the performer in mind. Let's hear one more performance before we move to another Prelude and Fugue, and that is Landowska in the E minor Prelude and Fugue. Landowska in the Prelude and Fugue in E minor, the 10th.
We'll be back with David Dubal in today's program of A Musical Offering in just a few moments.
The 11th Prelude and Fugue in F major, and let's hear Edwin Fischer. The F major Prelude and Fugue, and the performance by Edwin Fischer, a bit academic, I would say, Matt. Prelude too fast, a little garbled. Spacing's not providing any air for us. Let's hear what Glenn Gould does. Glenn Gould was certainly breathing better there than the Edwin Fischer. And we conclude with the F major Prelude and Fugue for today. We'll hear Landowska and perhaps other F major Preludes and Fugues when we return. Have a good day, Matt.